Intro. It's intro time. Shush. Everyone shut up. So Hollywood has been having honestly, they've been getting a lot of decent news. With Hollywood going about getting, sorry, let me pull up the story here. That would help. So Hollywood's been getting a lot of good news as far as like financial support. Even the White House has come to bear to try to bring tariffs against foreign films in order to bring in order to bring more production back to Hollywood. And not even Hollywood in general, but just the states in general. And I think Trump is probably agnostic on which state it goes to, but he has made comments about Hollywood specifically needing to be fixed and rebuilt, and it needs to be Hollywood great again. Needs to be made great again.
Gotta make Hollywood great again.
There's been a couple articles that have kind of covered this theme over the last few days. California Governor Gavin Newsom proposes $7.5 billion tax incentive for studios to make America film again. Make America film again. Wow. Yeah, exactly. That's stupid. What a terrible slogan. After Trump unveils tariff plan on foreign-made films. So just to summarize that up.
MAFA, make America film again.
MAFA.
MAFA.
Well, I mean, I know that California is just raking in the big money with all the taxes and all the major taxpayers leaving the state. So I know they just have $7.5 billion just to throw around. I mean, they didn't just have a tremendous wildfire that they were still dealing with, and they're not dealing with all the production leaving. But I mean, when it comes to the international community, all these other large countries, all these other countries with a good economy are pushing for films to come into their countries. UK, for example, had, I think, what was a 30% rebate, tax rebate.
Georgia did, yeah, 30%.
Well, Georgia, but
yeah, I mean, like, I'll say.
Exactly. So additional stories we have in the same sphere. We have Disney Abu Dhabi expansion raises eyebrows as virtue signaling America company partners with restrictive Middle Eastern regime. This one was hilarious to hear and read the first time through. It was so freaking funny that you have the one company, one of the biggest and most outspoken companies on like on modern culture, like politics, virtue signaling, all of that, now is going to be moving their stuff to the Middle East. That's ridiculously that's so dumb. We'll probably talk a little bit about that.
We're gonna have roof parties and people are gonna fall from it.
Yeah. No railings, no capes. And then our last story we're going to be covering on this one would be Disney CFO encouraged by the Trump film tariff plan. He wants to make the industry stronger. So let's go through just our initial thoughts on these topics. Hollywood in general, the tariff plan, the Disney moving some of their stuff to the Middle East, and then obviously Gavin Newsom just printing money and saying it's good policy. What has changed about Hollywood in the last few weeks has been insane.
Well, I mean, it's like, all right, so it's expensive as fuck to film in Hollywood.
It is. Not all of it has to be there.
Yeah, no, you can film in any fucking state whatsoever. I think the point basically is to bring, Trump doesn't want Hollywood to turn into the next Detroit.
Uh-huh.
Where it's like just a fucking ghost town where it's rampant crime and whatnot. But like the whole tariff thing has been going off. So it's like tariffs on everything.
I'm fine with that. It's working too. India came to bear for the trade negotiations. You had, who was it? Canada's now starting the conversation. Carney was made a joke of in the Oval Office. It was hilarious.
I'm fine, but it's it becomes like almost a meme.
Yeah, the UK. Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, you want to do something? Tariff. Unless it's in the US.
Well, and so not to stay too hard on the we can't avoid it. So I'll stop caveating it. We'll just talk about what we need to talk about. But when it comes to the tariffs and everything related to like the film industry, I would rather see, like, I'm not a too big to fail guy. I think Hollywood, I think it's to the benefit of movies at large for Hollywood to fail. I think that if you incentivize movies to come back for Hollywood's sake, I have a problem with it. But if you have movies come back to America for America's benefit, I'm good with something along those lines. But I do think Hollywood we don't need to be on the we must save Hollywood bandwagon. They haven't produced anything worth saving. They don't have any interest in starting to. They are the propaganda wing of the identitarians. So I'm not a fan of them at all. I don't want them to succeed or to succeed, and I definitely don't want anything related to like our national interests being leveraged to save them. I mean, maybe I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I probably would make the counter argument for like the automotive industry. But
I mean, it already is too big to fail, though.
Well,
they get bailouts.
True, but they. I mean, that's true. Yeah, you're right. You're right. And
so it's like, yeah, you're too big to fail, as in like you failed, but you're an industry that the government likes, so therefore
you get more. Yeah. So
you get bailed out of your failure.
So I'm not a fan of that. That's something I would see an end to if I had my say, and that was the will of the masses. And honestly, again, I'm not even remotely convinced that Hollywood needs to be saved. If they were just intelligent about how they started making films and they removed all of these restrictions, the industry would come back to them, because I gather that it's harder for people to move their industries overseas if you had equal playing field in both regions. But if you have if the grass is much greener over in Europe and in other countries, then yeah, you're gonna want to move.
Like, it brings back, it's like, all right, make movies in America kind of thing, but then that gives like, I don't know, like 40,000 jobs a film or whatever, because you got caterers, you got all the people behind the scenes, blah blah. It's giving them all work and whatnot. But like, the incentive to, like, Europe has been giving incentives to film overseas. England does it and whatnot. It's like, hey, we're going to give you this astronomical tax break.
Do you think, I want to ask you a question about your like English movies, like the BBC productions and stuff like that.
The state?
Yeah, the state. Well, I mean, like this, yeah, the UK. I want to know, like, in your opinion, do you think that like European British movies are made to a similar or to a good standard, or do you think on average? Here, I'll say my opinion of like movies and shows that come out of the BBC is I can't stand them. I can't stand looking at them. I think the acting, I think the acting, the scripts, dialogue, I think it's all terrible. I think that it's basically what I would expect to see with a high school film project. That's what everything coming out of the BBC looks like to me.
Government made. It's made by the state. The BBC, it's like, when it comes to like British television and whatnot, they have taxes on their goddamn TVs and shit.
Yeah.
And so everything's like state made by the state, and therefore it's not gonna be this fucking Citizen Kane or whatever.
Well, and so clarify this for me, because I might be misunderstanding how it works over there. Then Sherlock, right? We both loved it. Benedict Cumberbatch. That wouldn't have been produced by an independent studio put on the BBC to broadcast?
Yes, what was the question?
So like the movies and shows are produced by independent studios, but then they're put on the BBC, which is a taxpayer-funded system. So like the BBC is the host of
they don't make everything themselves. Right. Yes.
It's the quality of the film is kind of what I'm attacking.
But it's like the government has like the thumbs up or thumbs down of whether this can be broadcast on there.
And the government only likes grainy, low budget, terrible like high school projects.
Yeah. That's kind of the way, isn't
it? Am I right? Well, I mean,
no, it is because like I've watched multiple British television shows through like the 2010s, and whatnot. They all kind of look the same. They all look very low budget.
Exactly. Well, like Doctor Who is one of the most popular shows that's ever been produced. It has a huge history. Now, I'm not invoking the argument that it's declined in popularity and it's just put out shit for a long time.
It has.
I'm not invoking that argument. I'm just saying that it is a huge franchise that the BBC has been the host of, and it still looks grainy and low budget and bad. I mean, most of like what I've seen from Doctor Who could have been produced by high schoolers with a few $100 and a decent camera.
I mean, I don't watch it, but it also could be like the quirk of the show.
It could be. I mean, it's got a long running. I mean, I think it's really for I'm just gonna shit on Doctor Who fans, but I think it really is for like neckbeards in their parents' basement who just are trying to find something stupid to watch while they're stoned.
You're stereotyping.
I am. I am overtly stereotyping and invoking their like just a specific characteristic of person
Yeah.
as
I
a
think
Doctor Who
people
fan.
that are Doctor Who fans grew up on Doctor Who.
Well, it's been
Like, because I tried to get into it in my late 20s, and it's not for me.
well, I think it's like from like the late 60s, early 70s. Like,
Yeah, it's the longest running.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's ridiculously old. And I do understand that there is something there to gravitate towards, and I respect its size and scale. I just don't respect the audience that keeps propping it up and making it so.
It's been dead for like a decade.
It's been yeah.
It's been dying for a decade, I should say. Same with Star Wars.
So okay, so the $7.5 billion. Let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, obviously, Gavin Newsom and California have their own incentive for wanting the industry to come back to them. But rather than removing restrictions and limitations on production, and maybe that's a part of this bill or whatever he's going to propose as a solution. But if you leave restrictions up and you just give money, that just means the studios just have to take that money and immediately spit it right back in, and you just have UBI. You just have all these government subsidized jobs, which bad, not good. We don't want government subsidized jobs. We want jobs of actual value that the market can determine have value.
I don't really care what happens to Hollywood and California at this point.
Let them die. Let them burn.
I've been praying for the
Let the industry
San
die,
Andreas
not
fault to go for
Okay.
the longest time. But like Gavin Newsom, he's been in power for God knows. He's been around for fucking ever now. But California has taxed every profitable business out of their state. Like they've taxed them so much that everyone just fucking moves.
Yep.
Every tech company, Hollywood moved a long time ago. They've been doing it in other states and across the seas and whatnot.
The frustrating thing is that Californians and people who align with that ideology keep arguing that if everyone had the same tax rate everywhere, there'd be no incentive for businesses to leave. I'd be like, then there's also no incentive for them to come. So basically, you have the whatever industry. If you implemented that plan perfectly today, every state would remain exactly the same economically. Well, every industry would die out, because the policy is ridiculously dumb. But exploring your utopia, there would be no incentive for any industry to move between locations, and everything would just gravitate towards the most aesthetically attractive states, and that would basically be it. Everyone would amalgamate towards one spot, and it would become horrible and just degrade over time, and then break down, and then it's okay, this utopia never works, is my point.
It's the whole like tax the rich or like eat the rich kind of thing. It's like, all right, so we're gonna tax the fuck out of the rich, and it's like, oh well, the rich people have all the businesses and whatnot and employ a bunch of people, so it's like, we're gonna tax the fuck out of them. It's like, all right, so they'll just move to a state with lower taxes, and that state becomes more rich because
And I was just a young tot, a little boy, when I learned.
He's still a little boy.
When I learned not to steal, when I went for a cookie in a cookie jar and got my hand swatted, and
I didn't get that lesson.
So I learned not to steal, and so I look at the rich people. I'm like, I would love their money, yes, please. But then I'm like, oh, you're just gonna take it by force with guns because they don't want to just give you the money.
Well, it's like a tear down system. It's like, you're doing better than me. So
now I'm incentivized to hate
give me
you
until you elevate me until said state, and then it's just a fucking like a domino effect.
It would be
to where we're all poor.
I'll be honest, like the utopian dream is appealing in my mind. I look at
aren't people required to read The Giver in high school?
I think so, yeah. Yep. Well, we did.
Yeah.
But I look at like Elon Musk and I'm like, yeah, it would be good if he had if there was something saying that money can't just sit idle. But Elon Musk then is a horrible example of that, because every dollar he has is invested working towards going to space, colonizing Mars, making free speech popular across the world.
Well, if you ask a random person on the street and be like, Elon Musk has $200 billion or whatever, it's like, well, there's 350 million people in the US. If you gave them all, $1 million.
Yeah. The math is astounding. It doesn't make a difference. I mean, the US I like what we're doing with the taxes and with trying to cut costs in government. They found something like
And bringing industry back to the U.S.
and bringing industry and jobs back. Yeah, exactly. And I loved seeing the other day, JD was when the India-Pakistan conflict came up, and JD was like, it's not we're not involved. We're not a part of it. It's none of our business. I'm just like, okay, the VP of the United States just made it perfectly clear. We're not getting in the middle of this one.
Yeah.
And I'm like, finally, a war we didn't dive nose first into. It's like finally.
I've always hated being the peacekeepers of the world.
Yes, and also yes.
But yeah, no, bringing back. Well, it's like so with the tax incentives and all that shit. It's like of filming overseas. Does that really hinder or equate to like the 100% tariff? Is like, all right, I produce a film for. It would cost $200 million in the U.S. Flat, or I can get this huge ass tax break doing it overseas, and it still might.
That's a really good question, and I wonder that too. Now, here's my first thought that went through my mind when you asked the question. I was like, Trump's a Hollywood guy. He was in movies. He had a show. He had The Apprentice. He was famous in that universe. He would have some idea of like what number would make some sense.
Well, he's got his Hollywood team too.
He's got his Hollywood team. He's got the Hollywood ambassadors. In my mind, I'm thinking no. Think about like Hollywood is the industry of the U.S. for movie making, and then you have kind of these satellite states, Georgia being the most popular example, and then I think they have some industry in Texas and Florida. But Florida really does not want the industry to come to Florida. So like Gavin Newsom has said, if you bring film here, that brings liberals here. We don't want it. I mean, I'm not quoting him. That's not a quote, but I'm like, that's his policy position on that is how I... So my point being that...
we don't want this Film Actors Guild.
We don't want the Florida Actors Guild.
Florida Actors Guild.
So they don't want... I don't think that it will offset. I don't think 100% is enough. I think it might slow down people who are making the decision to leave as of yet. But we reported on this the other day. We read up on the article that... what was it? 90% of like sound studio bookings had been shut down. They was down from like 500 to like 12 or something. And then you have huge amounts of the industry like leaving Hollywood or not even being booked at all. And moving those overseas, Hollywood demands certain criteria for how much staff you must employ that these other countries don't. And if you're allowed to cut all of this extra staff, the 40 staff on site at any moment, if you're allowed to cut all that, you're going to save so much more than the 100%. I don't know. I don't know if 100% is the right number. Maybe it isn't.
I think it's just like a threat of like, let's not let the film industry die. Like we've been the cultural kings, I guess, since Hollywood started, to where it's like we put out the culture. Everyone watches American movies and whatnot.
Yep.
Barely anyone watches Bollywood or shit coming out of South Korea and blah, 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 blah.
And to be fair...
We set the standard.
Well, and to that point, all those industries who are young all made the same mistake that like the Daily Wire made when they started making their own projects. They took their culture and they made that. Only like with very little variation. Almost every Bollywood film I've ever been encountered has that, I won't call it weird, that beautiful and culturally
the
like
most
significant
badass action scenes ever.
Well, no, I was talking about the
physics don't matter.
I'm talking about the weird dancing, weird Indian.
You gotta put a dancing number in there.
Yeah, but I mean, Marvels had to have it. The Eternals had to have it.
The Marvels did have it. Yeah.
Yeah. The Eternals had to have it. That in I don't even know if I thought he was a Pakistani guy. The actor who Amal. I'm gonna get his name. I like the actor. I actually don't have a gripe with him. I just can't come up with his name. But he's the Indian Pakistani guy who plays in the Eternals. He's one of the main cast of the Eternals. I cannot come up with his name, but he was on Harmon Quest twice. He's the only character, or he's the only guest visitor who was on Harmon Quest 2 times. And so and he's absolutely hilarious. I think he is fun to watch. I think he is talented. I think he's poorly utilized. I don't think he's in as good of films as he could be in.
Yeah, he's also in Mass Effect 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, what the fuck is this? All right, you got to pull that up. Yeah, you got to pull that up. But so I think that the staffing cuts that all of these industries are going to enjoy by doing their business overseas, I think is going to help a lot. I think they get access to a huge pool of new talent that they'll get to explore and play with. They have all the tools they need to be successful. They don't need anything from Hollywood. And honestly, like Hollywood putting up the $7.5 billion shows that they have not learned a lesson. It's like giving the industry like $7.5 billion in tax incentives is not going to get rid of all these restrictions you've mandated be followed. I think the bird is
also in Hollywood they have hiring
quotas and
whatnot. You have to check the boxes. It's like, we need a sound girl that only has one arm. We need
yep. Yeah, exactly.
It's Kamal Nanjiani, by the way.
Kamal Nanjiani. I wish I had remembered that name because I do like this guy, and I didn't want to give off the wrong impression on it.
I was gonna throw something out there, but I didn't want to seem racist.
Yeah,
but then again,
racist? Nah.
I could start a Gifts and Go and make hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I'm curious where that's at. We'll check it out later.
But like, I'm also at the same time, it's like, yeah, bring it back. So we give all these people work and whatnot. But at the same time, it's like, well, fuck the industry. Who the fuck cares? Let it die.
Yep.
So something else can be born.
The whole point of this channel for me was to incentivize and motivate people to be independent artists, independent creators, like to get people encouraged to go make their own projects and to see if we can have a new renaissance, a new golden era of creation. I mean, I'm looking at like Fight Club as being like one of the perfect films or one of the top.
Talk about Fight Club.
Well, we have to.
We can't.
But we have to.
That's the first rule.
Rule number 3 is I got to get it out. Rule number 3 is I got to tell you. But Fight Club was done from a screenplay. It was just an original. It was just an original screenplay that just made it to production.
A book.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure you would know better than me. It's not a screenplay. I thought it was.
It was filmed after the book.
Okay. But that's my point, is that you had an independent Hollywood in the 90s that was working on creative projects, and I mean, what we really need.
Well, you're not allowed to be like, directors aren't allowed to be creators anymore. Like, you only have a few, like a Denis Villeneuve, Quentin Tarantino, Christopher Nolan. Like, they have control over their work. Otherwise, you're just being hired by a studio to put out a product. That's why there's a lot of directors that just flat out dismiss, or like they get job offers from like Marvel or Disney or whatever. It's like, no, I'm not gonna do that because I'm just a dude in a chair at that point. There's no vision
behind
already
it.
Planned out. The script's already done. It's like there is no creative work there. You're just in a job.
Yeah, and I think that's okay. So I think Amazon specifically, I want to call out Amazon on this one. I want to give them kudos. That's what I'm calling them out to do. I want to give them kudos because it seems like to some degree, and maybe not the perfect solution, but to some degree, they are giving independent creators who are coming to Amazon to bring their projects a lot or total creative control. And there's a specific project that I'm talking about with Has Been Hotel. Has Been Hotel was a YouTube channel, Vivzy Pop. Go check out her YouTube channel. Find Has Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss. Those projects are awesome. I think I freaking love them. She had an announcement that came out, I think it was earlier this week or late last week, that they were renewed for more seasons of Has Been Hotel, and Hell of a Boss was going to be coming to Amazon Prime, and Vivzy was going to maintain 100% creative control. Absolutely zero external influence whatsoever. She was going to maintain 100% control. If that is true, because obviously the contract is not public, so if that's true, fantastic. That's a huge incentive for independent creators to come to you because they want to have the product that they love on other platforms. The issue is that they need tools in order to get bigger. And if you want to be on YouTube, you'll lose a huge chunk of your revenue by just being on YouTube, giving it to YouTube. And
30% goes to YouTube. Yeah,
and you're doing 100% of the work with no benefit from YouTube. Like, YouTube's team doesn't help you. They don't spread the word or anything. They just give you more things you can buy. So more tools to spend money on.
Yeah, with Prime, with Amazon Prime, when they stick their heads into certain IPs, it turns to shit. But if they just leave them alone, turns out awesome. You got Reacher, you got Terminalist, you got Vox Machina, you got all the Invincible. It kind of got meddled with.
But I think Robert Kirkman agreed with 100% of the changes. I've seen a few interviews from him about the Invincible project, and he has not had anything negative to say about Amazon and their influence on on it. And then on that same point, Amazon made a show that made it to 99% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's one of my favorite series that's out. So yes, you're right. They've given him a lot of freedom, but the original work benefited from some of the revisions, in my opinion.
The problem always goes to studio heads that are just the money men.
Yes.
They don't
bean counters.
They don't watch anything. They don't care about pop culture or the arts or whatever. They just look at the numbers. And for some reason, the numbers always
lie.
Yeah.
It's like, what can we get away with lying about this time? It's like, how many millions, hundreds of millions of dollars can we say we didn't lose?
It's like, oh, Rings of Power did this many. And it's like, all right, so we got to lie our asses off to our investors in order to keep funding this fucking thing.
Well, let's say you have then you have the industries that move overseas, and one of the benefits of this, one of the best pros that's come out of Hollywood moving some of their movies to the UK is that they are forced to, for tax transparency, they're forced to divulge their taxes. They can't hide it.
They can lie for a while.
Yep.
And then it eventually comes out.
Yep. Just, oh man, to be a fly on the wall of like a tax office and just see all this shit as you're processing it. I should go work for the IRS just to get the scoop.
You're just a tax man sitting there and it's like, Thunderbolt's $200 million. I don't know about that.
So what do you think about like Disney moving some of their projects and expanding into Abu Dhabi? I mean, this
go for it, dude.
Let them.
I don't.
That's
their ideology clashes with that so much, but it doesn't matter because it's more of a Disney's ideology is more of a show. It's not actually something they believe in.
It's a skin suit they wear.
Yeah, it's a skin suit they wear. They've thanked a province in China that has concentration camps in it.
Yep.
For what are they? Uyghurs?
The Uyghur Muslims, yeah. Yeah.
For the remake of one of my favorite films of all time, Mulan.
That they absolutely butchered and ruined.
Yeah.
Poor China.
It's just, no. It's all liars and it's just like money moving. Who cares at this point? I want Hollywood to die so something else can be brought up.
Honestly,
like we got Hamptons instead.
Do we get to at this point? I mean, obviously we have our own gripe with YouTube, but do we get to thank YouTube now for being the place where independent content goes to be created? Obviously, Google's had a rough year. I don't know if you heard this, but Google has been getting its ass kicked on market share for search engine. Google's losing search engine. AI, ChatGPT, and Grok. The AI, they're so much more efficient search engines. I'll give you an example. So let's say you wanted to search.
I'm using Bing right now.
Obviously. Yeah, but let's say you wanted to search for a specific article that came out 10 years ago, and you're trying to tell a friend, but you can only remember vague details about the article. You put in some of those vague details into YouTube in hopes that you maybe can find it on the front page or in one of the pages if you got specific enough, and then you have to keep hammering those little details, but you have almost no way of recognizing it. You put that in there, YouTube keeps putting new content on top of those articles. So any article that comes up, it's going to be prompting you to the newest and the most popular result. Not the one you're specifically looking for, but the newest and most popular are the factors they're going to be focusing in their search engine versus the specifics. If you use AI with their large data set algorithms, they actually will take those key details and they'll be like, oh, I know exactly what story you're talking about. Here it is. Here's a summary. Here's the link. Go ham.
So there might be better search engines, but Google has something that no one else has. It's in the vernacular of the public.
So Kleenex.
It's like, hey, you don't know something? Google it.
Yes, I don't think that. Okay, so when, but here's a counter to that. You just said the vernacular, but you also clarified your main search engine or the one you're using right now is Bing.
Yeah, it's just because that's the one that pops up when I.
So
It's not like an active.
They can have the verb. They can have the verb, and we'll let the money.
It's not an active choice. It's just the thing that pops up using my Microsoft computer.
Yeah, but this is my point. Google has not been winning on the search. Google has not been winning on this front. And honestly, Google puts so much effort into filters and restricting the content you can see and making everything DEI. So when Google had their AI come out and they had their image generation and people were looking for samurai, Japanese samurai,
Black Japanese samurai.
They made Assassin's Creed Shadows.
What's funny is if you go to Firefox, you're searching on Yahoo, which I didn't even realize was a thing still.
No, that's crazy. But yeah, ChatGPT actually got a huge upgrade recently, and I can testify that it is fantastic. I'm really enjoying it. I think it's a huge upgrade. I think it's actually better than Grok, and I've been using Grok for a while.
The fuck is Grok?
That's X. That's X's.
Go.
That's X's platform. Grok is X's AI. That's Elon Musk's AI. Grok. That's what it's called.
Just fucking search engines, man.
They're obsolete now. There's no reason to use them. If you're going to use AI, you're going to get much better information. You're going to get specific information. There's no reason to go to a search engine if you have Grok or if you have ChatGPT.
If search engines are basically there for like people that want like general information on a sort of topic.
Yeah.
We live in a world now where everyone just knows or goes to a certain place that they can trust. There's no like, I'm going to search the story and scroll through 10 fucking things that Google put there for me or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's not a thing anymore.
Well, but then you also have Google's AI they're so far behind on the AI game that they're worse than
racist AI.
They're worse than Copilot, which is Microsoft's AI, which Microsoft is implementing into all of their they're implementing into Word, Excel, all their email. Like Microsoft is putting Copilot inside of every Microsoft product they possibly can and trying to get them to work together. Then you have Elon Musk with X, and he has access to the largest social media platform in existence, and he's porting in. I'm sorry. Technically, I think YouTube would be the largest, versus X for a social media platform.
Yeah,
but just
it's
not
second to Google.
Yeah, not to get my own not to fuck up my own explanation, but X as Grok, and they went no holds barred for trying to be the most accurate possible because they limited their restrictions and their like censorship. And then you have China, who was beating ChatGPT, or was reported that they were beating ChatGPT by their own like stories and articles that they were putting out about it. But even if it's just as good as ChatGPT or just barely not as good as ChatGPT, that's still miles ahead of where Google was last time they put out their big update. So Google's fucked. They're so far behind on AI. Their search engine is not the main thing to use anymore. It's still.
Well, I mean, like, say you have an HP computer, like I do.
Yeah.
Pull up Microsoft Edge. What's the homepage? It's MSNBC, or no, it's just MSN.
But in the same vein, if you have...
and it just gives you all these fucking articles from the same people all the time. It's The Verge, it's Screen Rant, it's just all these bullshit companies that pay to be on that.
Yep. But then you also have Copilot on that same screen. I'm not gonna, don't show me the laptop, but the Copilot logo should be on that MSN.
Hentai.
What? it's all on. Okay, so let's get into the specifics of the story. I basically, my point was Google was getting its ass whooped for being shit. But the Disney CFO, okay, so this is the most recent story. It comes out from That Park Place. Disney CFO, encouraged by the Trump film tariff plan, he wants to make the industry stronger. We go in right away. During CNBC interview following Disney's quarterly earnings report, Johnson addressed Trump's call for a 100% import tax on movies made outside the United States. Rather than outright rejecting the idea, Disney executives offered a surprisingly diplomatic take. That's because they don't want to stop spending extra money on these movies. They want them to cost a ridiculous sum of money for being
laundering.
Yeah. Yes. And so,
how else do you explain a $300 million budget on a movie?
Honestly, I think it is the mandates
of bad Coke habit.
Yeah. Yes, I think. Well, there's an incentive for job creation, but it's unions. It's unions. The states have. If your ideology aligns with these unions and you want to have policies that follow those guidelines, those principles that you have to. And honestly, maybe from a religious perspective for them, they're looking at all these jobs moving overseas and being like, how are they making all these films without 50 boom mic operators? So obviously we need that to come back to the States so that we can create all these jobs.
You gotta have another boom mic operator holding the back of the other boom mic operator so they don't get tired.
It's dangerous. We have more from Johnston. It's a little bit early to try to do the math on 100% tariffs or anything like that. What I was actually most encouraged by, the president talked about the fact that he wants to help the industry and he wants to make the industry stronger. We certainly are more than happy to help in terms of designing things that would make sense to make the industry stronger, and we look forward to doing that. Okay, I'm really glad he said that. Trump already has his Hollywood ambassadors. He already has industry professionals who make good work. We covered the story at the beginning of the year with the Trump's Hollywood ambassadors. The Voight, we have Stallone, Gibson, and I think a few more people have come to the table on that. And honestly, I think the people Trump has surrounded himself with are going to be good advisors. The last person I would want any advice from on this topic would be the CFO of Disney. The last frickin' person I would want any input from.
Been putting out good shit, makes a shitload of money.
Yeah, but you lose more.
I'm joking. No, nothing Disney has put out in the past 5 years has been profitable, except for
it's a short list. Well, you have Deadpool, Wolverine, not to Disney's credit, but Deadpool, Wolverine, Inside Out 2 made money. So that
Moana 2 I think made money.
Moana 2
is a thing. I totally forget about
Lion King. I'm confessing to a lot of I'm being very honest here, and I don't like it. The fact that some of these Disney movies have made money really is frustrating as hell. But whatever, the audience gets to dictate. You spend your money on the movies you want to see. If you want Lion King remakes,
if you want retarded children, bring them to these movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I said it. All right, so the article continues, a strategic alignment with Newsom. So that's the earlier article we talked about. This comes just days after California Governor Gavin Newsom proposed an ambitious expansion of the state's film tax credit program. Newsom's pitch would more than double California's current film incentive package from $330 million to $750 million annually. He also floated a federal level partnership with the Trump administration to create a $7.5 billion tax credit aimed at bringing production back to U.S. soil. Again, these industries do not need tax credits. They need good films. They need freedom. They need less restrictions. They need good product. Then they will be successful. You don't need to give a studio back 30% of their money that they spent on it just for making a piece of shit film. You know what
$7.5 billion gets you in Hollywood? 10 Disney movies.
Exactly. Annually. Guys, that's a huge point. This is the strongest argument for this to not happen, because this means that your federal tax dollars will pay for 10 Disney films to be produced every year. Do you want that? Do you want 10 more Disney films being produced in
$7.5 billion would be cool if the budgets were $40 million.
Yeah, you'd actually a year you would get so much of that money would go to independent creators. There is something about that idea that I do like. However, tax dollars going to Hollywood sounds horrible.
Just give the 7.5 to A24 or something.
It's A24, Angel, Blumhouse, any smaller studio. Blumhouse isn't that small anymore, I suppose, but any smaller studio.
Shit.
Well, and
slasher films.
But okay, hold on. I want to clarify something. Are you pro this idea or are you anti this idea? I'm anti this idea.
I'm kind of anti. I want Hollywood to die in order to learn a lesson, basically.
Yes.
It's like you can't keep bailing people out or giving them incentives to keep doing horrible shit.
So the distinction between Detroit and Hollywood, as far as industries, is that Detroit was making product that we want and we continue to buy to this day.
And it was practical.
Hollywood does not make product that anybody wants.
It's not practical.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not practical. It doesn't make. It's
You're not going to take a film to the apocalypse.
And all that money is just going to get.
You might take a V8 Ford F350.
That money is just going to go to more corrupt NGOs that are just going to spread it around to promote DEI and be used in future elections. It's not going to go to independent and creative people, which would be the only benefit if you had a program like this, would be for it to possibly get to them.
I don't know. Maybe does it? if you think about it, when it comes to like you know, the U.S. is in horrible debt or whatever.
Yep.
Would it help the debt at all?
Think about it this way. So every movie that goes
like, what's the pros? Like, why is Trump trying to do this? Is it just to make Hollywood not another Detroit?
So it's okay. So it's the international
Why?
It's the international trade from the films. So the money that the U.S. gets, from it is when you have Deadpool and Wolverine make $2 billion or however much it made, and you make a big portion of that overseas. That money comes back to the U.S. I don't know if there was already a tariff or not.
They don't. Yeah, you put out a good example with Deadpool and Wolverine, obviously, because it made over $1 billion.
It makes more sense to talk about the big numbers.
Everything else.
Yeah.
There's Deadpool and Wolverine that made money.
Yep.
Made over $1 billion. There's 60 films in between those.
Yep.
That don't make any money whatsoever.
Yeah. If you had so
they lose money.
Yeah, on the small
scale. If you're a rich dude and you want to invest, why?
On a small
how does Hollywood even have rich investors anymore?
I have no idea. Well, okay, actually I do, because like they have the main big guys who have always been that always goes.
It's laundering.
It's laundering. It's fraud. It's waste, fraud, and abuse. It's more keywords and catchphrases. But so you on the smaller companies, for example, you're right. The taxes that get paid into the U.S. government on a movie that cost $100 million to produce and makes $30 million at the box office, and the government gives the British government, I'll use their number, would give a 30% rebate back. That $30 million from the government, the $30 million from the box office. The government doesn't get $30 million that offsets that. So it is just a net loss.
I hate the politics of this so much.
You could make a case that there's the small scale, like the boom mic operator goes, buys a coffee. That's a 50 cents sales tax on that. So you could say the production in its entirety has a bunch of micro tax transactions, but all of it is pennies. It's not like pennies to the big numbers. It's not
right. You don't spend $100 million to make $105 million.
Exactly. But the government is. Like, if we're talking about the tax incentive program and the government's role in this, the government does not financially benefit from these films happening, which means tax dollars are being given back in refunds and rebates to Hollywood. Tax dollars go to Hollywood for making failed products to offset their failures. And they're not breaking.
And they still don't have water in their fire hydrants.
Yes, exactly. So, okay, we should do a few. We should do a few takeaways on this real quick, just to summarize it up and wrap it up, because the tax programs that California wants to initiate are not the problem. It's your restrictions. I think the program itself is fundamentally flawed in that we don't have there's no benefit to the American people, the average American person, for Hollywood to succeed. And then I think that the monetary benefit, like if we're talking about waste, fraud, and abuse, do not give our tax dollars to Hollywood. Do not give our tax dollars to the film industry. Do not bail them out for making shit products and having a failing structure. I would say that, anything I missed there as far as...
like if I was the government or Trump, this would be a non-thing and just let Hollywood do its own thing because they're dying out and I want to let them die.
Yes. Okay. Gotcha there. All right. So all three articles were brought to us from That Park Place. Marvin Montanaro, Disney CFO, encouraged by Trump tariff plan. He wants to make the industry stronger. Great articles. Thank you so much for writing them, and really appreciate the hard work.
I tell myself that everything will end up alright. Just push yourself, test yourself, figure out what you like, and find your limits. Don't be rigid, always work towards a prime. Surround yourself with open minds, people can change your life. A few friends with intent can help you feel alive. Find a passion, take some action, and with a little time, just be patient, make a statement, try to enjoy your life.